I mean, I had just played a prison guard in a movie with Kiefer Sutherland called Last Light. If I said, okay, well, I just did a prison guard, I don't want to play another prison guard, and I wouldn't have done Shawshank. Everybody's sort of selling to everybody else in this business. You know, you have to be able to say, like this, like he was in that one, like he was in that one. And this is a realization I've come to over the years. And so you do have to make an effort to bust out of that. But at the same time, you have to be careful that in making the effort to bust out of that, you're not saying, I'm not interested in Shawshank Redemption.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Clancy Brown is an actor. He sat down with me in cyberspace to talk about the work. Can you compare and contrast the roads that you went down toward wrapping your arms around the character when you first started out in your career as compared to now in your career? Are there shortcuts? Are the roads entirely different? Did you realize that maybe there was shortcuts in the beginning that now you realize I can't cut that off? That's the road I have to go down, and no matter how long it is. Basically, what I want to know is like the difference now from all of these years in the initial preparation process. If you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's such a good question because I imagine you talk to actors of all ages and at all points in their career and at all levels of notoriety and expertise, and you know it's always in flux, right? Certainly, I'm probably not as good an actor in many ways now as I was when I was younger. You know, just in terms of energy and certain disciplines, but in probably more ways, I'm much better than I was back then. So I definitely put what seems to be a lot more effort into it. You know, on the surface, when I was younger, I couldn't tell you any specific exercises that I did aside from just memorization tricks and stuff like that, which I still do. And that is the most important thing you can do. You know, you gotta do the Spencer Tracy thing, learn your lines. And so well enough so that you don't bump into the furniture, I would add, don't bump into the furniture, learn your lines. But as far as discovering a character, it would change. It would depend a lot on the description of the character I was playing, of the certainly of the medium, and what I noticed as I went on further. You have to pay attention to the story that you're telling. You have to pay attention to where you fit in the story, where your character fits in the story, because you can do a lot of work that you don't have to do for Deus Ex Machina role, or somebody that comes in at the end, and or somebody that's at the beginning, so or an exposition role. If you're an expository character, the most important thing that you can do is get that exposition out clearly, and so that you can set the scene for the rest of the narrative. And you have to know clinically what your role in the show is, as far as the narrative role, as far as that goes. And that's regardless of character. Then you can start adding in the character, and that's a little stranger, because that's the alchemy you're talking about. That's it depends on the writing, the style of writing, the syntax of that the writer uses, the description of the character. When I was younger, I kind of like just put a shitload of effort into all of those things all at once, and whatever stuck seemed to me to be, well, then that must be right, because that's what the universe is telling me, that this is what this character is. And that not always, but almost always wasn't true. It took me a few years to realize the primacy of knowing what your character's role is in the story. That's the most important thing.
Is there a real problem though, like overpacking that in, like you said, when you're just an expository character, like if you focus on that, then you're not doing the role properly dramaturgically.
It's never, an expository character is never just an expository character, but that's what you have to do that in the story.
Right.
And it is a matter of energy. It's a matter of focusing your energy in the right direction. So you have to pay attention to the exposition, and let's put it this way: you have to pay attention to the narrative responsibilities of your character within the story. Okay, so that's I think the number one job. That's pretty simple because that's learning your lines and not bumping into the furniture. Then you go with the description, you go with the job, however the physicalization, the voice, the makeup, the hair, that will reveal so much to you as far as and then you have to divine what the director or producer or other actor, whoever is the vision of that particular project, you have to divine what their vision is and how you can complement that as much as possible, or how you can fulfill it, and then fill in around the edges to complement it. And that's really the fun part, is adding the bells and whistles of your characterization, and that's what makes people remember it. But you got to be careful,
Right.
because you can get lost in that stuff. That's
Right.
some stuff that can really.
And I'm
really
imagining that
distract you.
this has to be thought about even for the audition in a way, because if you ignore that the role that your role plays, I mean role in terms of not the character, in terms of the story. If you ignore that part and you bring in a character in the audition, like you're saying, that part is mainly serving a dramaturgical purpose, then you could be doing amazing work in there, and the people are like, oh, this might not work because he doesn't understand that he's serving that. Could that be possible?
Well, first of all, every character serves a dramaturgical responsibility. I mean,
I guess you're right.
So I mean, you got to kind of know that, and you got to have faith that the people you're auditioning for know what that is. Very rarely do you get the whole script anymore to audition for something. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you're not even really aware what that is, aside from the cast breakdown of what you're being told by the powers that be. And those tend to be descriptions that are very, iconographic. They're not that helpful. And sometimes they're comic in their opposites. I mean, and often not accurate, really, honestly, because those descriptions are written for. They're not written for the people that make the thing. They're written for the people that finance the thing, that are behind it, that are marketing it, that are whatever. They're not written for the people that are on the set. And those descriptions all change once it's cast anyway. So when you go into it, your question was about auditioning. I'm kind of two minds. I'm like, first of all, you can't actually go in auditioning thinking you're going to get anything.
Yeah,
you're gonna be cast in anything. And so once you're sort of relieve yourself of that burden, then you're more free to have fun in the room. And when you're free to have fun in the room, you become actually a little bit more attractive. I've had moments where I've been so free that I've kind of alarmed the people that were in the room, like maybe taking it a little bit too far, maybe my interpretation. But it doesn't matter, because you're just going in there to exercise. If you're going in for something specific, you're going in for some historical role or some position, or something's very clear in the text of how you're supposed to present, then you got to do that work. I had an audition for a couple of famous directors that I really wanted to work with. And I had made some pretty strong choices, and I got some pretty negative feedback on my strong choices before. And I was disappointed, not in my choices or my execution or the feedback. Well, I was disappointed in the feedback because I really thought, I thought those were auteurs that would see through that and
that they would
realize that
appreciate
it was a
that.
choice, and and we could go. I've also made the mistake of asking the director to direct me. I mean, if you don't like what I just did, take me down the other path and let's see where it goes.
Why is that a mistake? That seems like it would be appreciated.
It would, yeah, right. For the most part, it is, but it's been a mistake before. It's been a mistake every now and then. People take it as some kind of arrogance or something. I don't think it's arrogant. I think it's an invitation, but that's just me and my presence in the room, I guess.
Yeah. But I mean, like that just seems like something that really should be overhauled at this point. Don't you think? I mean, like the audition process and
it has been. I mean,
I guess COVID has
this is
really,
what happens now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but yeah, is there really ever going to be a true like room again? I mean, in the first phase of auditioning, maybe there won't be, right? I mean, maybe the first time you walk in a room will be after they already see a tape.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I think that's actually what it's going to be.
How do you feel about that? I mean, well, let's back up. Do you want to be auditioning? Because if they offer you something and then the first time they see it is, maybe on a set, that can also be a problem.
Well, it's their call. It's their call. I mean, if they, they think they're buying something and they want to buy that thing, whatever they think it is, and they don't want to take the chance that they'll say no. I mean, that's happened to me before. I've been offered something, I've gone in and met somebody, and then, that they've said, that was an unimpressive meeting, and
wow.
They've withdrawn the offer. And I've made bad choices before, just on offers. So I think a meeting is always good. I think maybe an audition, maybe at my stage, you don't really have to do that anymore. Although I do enjoy the process.
You do?
For the most part, if I've got the time to do it and the inclination. It's been tough since I've had a family and stuff, but I'll be an empty nester soon. So plenty of time to just like look at my navel and prepare auditions for whoever.
Yeah. Is that because it's an opportunity to work? Like, do you think of it as
Yeah, no question. Explore, exercise, really exercise your memorization muscles and your Spencer Tracy, don't bump into the furniture muscles. But going forward, I think that's just how the technology is going to be. And I can make arguments both ways. People will pick people off a tape all the time, but I think there is an element, certainly, if you're going to be living with somebody for a few weeks, a few months, you really should be in a room and,
see how they smell, at least.
See how they smell. Yeah, right. Exactly.
Did you always enjoy auditioning, or is that something that eventually happened? Like, was it a stress for you? Was it a worry? Did you figure it out at a certain point?
It was a stress when I couldn't figure out what to do. If the sides weren't enough, or if I didn't get a script, early on, I used to go by my agency and actually pick up the script from a lockbox and read the whole thing and know where now you can't even, you have to sign NDAs, like that makes any difference.
Right.
When you just read a cop number 2 side, it's just kind of dumb how that's developed. But when you know it in context and you can actually do the work and you have the time, I love doing it. When I get called up and said, can you go in and you read this side for these people tomorrow morning? It's like, no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Then it becomes stressful.
Yeah.
Even if it's somebody you really want to work with, you say, hey, gosh, I don't know the context of this. I can't do it.
Yeah. What kind of director works best for you in the way that you work now? Some people have said recently they like adapting to directors, but I'm less interested in if you're an adapter or not. I want to know if ideally the person that would work best for you, and describe what that relationship would be like, or those characteristics.
Well, you have to adapt. I mean, that's part of the fun of it. Yeah, I'm fine with directors that just say faster, funnier, louder. I think that's great. I'm fine with directors that, say, I got what I need. If you want to do something else, let's, give it a shot. I'm fine with that. Sometimes I have ideas, sometimes I don't. It's really more like, which ones do I not work with? I don't work with ones that are inarticulate in what they want. You need and aren't and don't feel like they can be direct in communicating that. Or people that are working from a specific point of view. It's like actors that only follow the method or only do moments work, or that's their particular religion. And you can't do that. You can't imprison yourself that way. You have to. If you're imprisoned that way, then it's not only you're imprisoning yourself. Everyone else outside is wondering what the hell you're talking about. And that's happened a couple of times where for whatever reason, and I could speculate on the reasons, these directors just had a specific way that they expected to work and expected you to work that way, but then couldn't communicate exactly what they were talking about. And so that becomes very miserable and devolves into some kind of hierarchy on the set or whatever. I mean, it can just be really awful. It doesn't happen often because, most people realize that we're in a collaborative business. And, you have to be, especially if you're a director, you have to be able to tell your DP, what you want. And you have to be able to tell your designer, what color it is and what fabrics you want from the costume designer. And then, that kind of facility of communication, you can also use with actors. I mean, you're supposed to be able to use them with actors, and actors are supposed to be able to understand it, and most actors do. I've worked with very few prima donnas, not zero. I've worked with some good prima donnas, and I've worked with some prima donnas that just ruin it for everybody. But it's the world.
Is there a real difference between like some of these A-list directors that you've worked with, like the Coen brothers and Verhoeven and Soderbergh, people like this? Is there a real difference in on the set? I'm talking about strictly for the way the directors work with the actors.
Usually, if you're at that level, the actors will do whatever you want.
Even if you're not necessarily a director's actor. I mean, an actor's director.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No question. I mean, there's some actor maintenance tricks that if you're at that level, I'm sure you've learned, and or you have someone around you that can handle that. I mean, the main difference in why these guys are where they are is because of their preparation, and they have, more likely than not, they have a crew around them that they've worked with before. They have an ensemble that they've worked with before, and you're being invited into that family. And so, you can't come in guns blazing, if you're making any sense at all, but also those families, like most families, they tend to tolerate a lot of eccentricities, I mean, they just know how to do it. In Shawshank, it was a fairly new crew, but they were all, they were all people that had worked together, not necessarily with Frank, or any of the rest of us, although I recognized a few people that were on the crew. But it was a new crew, a newly assembled crew, and they were all top of the line guys because the script itself was so good. And they had all sort of decided on their own that they were going to support Frank in however he did it. And Frank used them to their utmost, and everybody appreciated that. That was the edgiest of all of the experiences with great directors, because it was kind of a new thing at that time. Frank was a first timer at that point, but he was a great communicator, and he wrote a great script, and everybody was on the same page about it. And so, it was, and we were all kind of pros at different levels, and it all worked out. But of the guys that you mentioned, Soderbergh wastes no time. He knows exactly what he wants. He gets it. It's almost, your performance is almost incidental. I mean, he will come down and he'll give you performance notes if he needs it, but he knows how he's putting the show together, and he can, he's flexible enough to make anything work. I think Coen brothers are also that way. They're very tolerant, but because they've done their preparation and they know what they want, they know the edges of how it'll work. So, it's not hard for them. Verhoeven is a different cat. He's always at 11, and he wants 11 from you all the time. And you just give him 11, because it's just fun to give him 11. So, and he's got great humor. And so, it's, they're all different. Everybody's different, but they're all familiar. Paul had worked with the DP and the producer before, and a lot of the same guys, a lot of the ADs and stuff, and the same with Coen brothers, and same with Steven. I mean, they work with the people that help them get their work done.
And you were saying like adapting is part of the whole job. But,
yeah, right. But you got to adapt.
What happens when you just don't gel with the director? And is it just a miserable time? Is it just work?
It can really suck. It can suck.
And you just get through it. Is there anything you can do?
It can really suck, and you can pray to be fired and all the rest of that. But, I mean, it's one of the great things about films is that there's always an end point. You're never living you're never in that marriage forever.
Right.
But that doesn't happen often. I mean, I can count maybe twice in my entire 30 years of doing this has that happened.
Do you have a problem when the actor you're acting opposite of doesn't hang around for your coverage?
Not anymore, no.
So what changed so that it's not a problem anymore? And what was the problem in the beginning?
Well, it's I don't know any actors that won't do that. I mean, we've all heard the On the Waterfront story too many times. So, but I don't know any actor that, when presented with, the option of sticking around for someone's coverage or not, will not volunteer to stick around. And I also know of no actor that, when it's presented to you, if the camera's on you, that will say, yes, if he needs to go home in order to make turnaround or whatever the reason is, send him home. Absolutely. I can do it. Maybe a younger actor can't do it as well. Maybe depending on the scene. But I can't, if it's an intense scene, if it's that requires presence, I can't imagine somebody not being there. They're rarely that situation. It's usually something else where it's just a look. I'll always release the actors to go home. I'll always, every single time, and I'll always stick around. I mean, it's just the way it is.
And I've heard you talk about, particularly on Billions, with Giamatti, like doing something off camera with him, and I guess you do this with a lot of actors, and veterans do this with each other, giving the actor who's got the camera on them different things besides what the lines are to kind of freshen it up so that they can react differently to what and say their lines, but you're giving them different kind of things off camera, right? I mean, that's something that's done, and veterans know how to do that, and that's actually beneficial. It's a way where like a tennis ball can't do that, or an intern or whatever, an extra reading the lines can't do that, and so there's always benefits to the actor actually doing the off-camera lines, of course.
Yeah, and you know who you can do that with. And usually you do it after they've gotten the scene word perfect, a couple of times, one time. And then you can start playing around, or maybe you'll even conspire, or ask permission to do that. If you're familiar enough with the actor, and you guys trust each other enough, then, you can direct each other a little bit even. I mean, you'll say, give me this, give me, let's go there, let's go here. I mean, that doesn't happen so often because usually we're just a playful bunch, and we want to take it to the next level. We just want to see what happens. But that kind of freedom will happen after you've gotten in the can something that's usable. Right. And then once you've got something usable, then you can really play around. And Paul's a great one for that. And I'm working with Michael C. Hall. He's also a great one for that now too.
Yes.
And once that's kind of established on a set, my very first movie, Sean Penn used to do it, and it was a revelation and a relief to me to know that you can do that. And of course, it makes perfect sense, but it's also one of the great things about film. Is that you can manipulate performance every single take just to see what happens, or to get it closer, or to play with the rhythms or whatever. I mean, that's what's fun about it.
And once the director gets wind of this, they would be idiotic not to want that to happen, right? I mean, because
sometimes, I mean, if sometimes a director has to come in and say, let's just get this done. Let's not waste our time on this, right?
Or we got it, guys.
Yeah, we got it. Put that energy someplace else. I mean, that's what a director directs. So that's okay. Sometimes directors will do it, and that's always fun. That's always great fun. I love that.
You need to talk me out of this next theory I have, and don't be afraid to tell me that I am wrong.
Okay.
You're an established, legendary voice actor, I'm a schmuck. So just tell me I'm wrong. Tell me that this is ridiculous. It's okay. Let me say it this way: if I was directing an animated show or an animated movie, I would want my voice actors to be off book. Not having to be off book is probably one of the great joys of the work, right? I mean, if you have to be off book, it's ridiculous. Right. But because you're reading, the way those words are coming from the reading part into your mouth rather than the whatever part, the mind part, that matters. Again, tell me I'm crazy. Go ahead.
You're crazy because you told me to say that.
I knew it.
Yeah, I mean, now we get into like questions of memorization. Forget the venue, it's or the genre, or the medium. Yeah, what happens in sessions often, in recording sessions, is that the first few takes are wasted takes because people are reading it, right?
And it just sounds like they're reading.
Yeah, I mean, which just tells you that they haven't done their homework. I mean, you gotta sit down and you gotta look at I mean, it's one of the great things about being, doing this and doing it in any medium is that you get to read the script and you get to see how it goes together and all the rest of that. It becomes It becomes a little bit more labor intensive with animation if you're lucky, because you'll see the storyboards and you have to see how, which is illuminating and precise, and you see exactly how the show is going to go together and what the visuals are, and you can see how your character is represented and match your reading accordingly, and that's great fun. But it takes an hour or two out of your otherwise not being paid day, and a lot of people just don't do that work, and they come in and they are expecting to be told, where to go and what to do, and faster, funnier, louder, slower, all the rest of that stuff, which is okay. But the people that I know that are good at it, they do the homework. I'm not as good at it as some of these people, and so I really kind of have to do the homework. I have to learn it, but that doesn't mean I'm off book. It just means I'm kind of familiar with the scene and what I think is the rhythm of the scene and so on and so forth. A lot of what happened, depending on the show, like Superman, we never went off book really. And, but SpongeBob, we have fun all the time. We're always riffing, and that's not unusual. So you kind of want to get to the point where and some people are good enough. Boy, I mean, there are people that are so good that they can come in and they can look at something for the very first time and just know it. But one of the things about animation is that, you do it over and over, which is you essentially learn it for that instant in your brain. It imprints. And that's true. And then you go on to the next scene and the next show, and it leaves immediately as well. So you're a little bit crazy, but it's kind of what happens anyway. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, it does. I mean, if we looked at your script, are you marking up? Are you doing crazy markings like so that you're almost even if you were reading it, the markings kind of handle some of what you need to in those first couple takes?
No, I mean, I circle my lines.
But you don't like mark things for emphasis and stuff like that?
No, I don't have a hieroglyphic that I use or steno kind of thing. Mostly my markings are just question marks, like what the hell does this mean?
You would think that if it's constantly on book, that you would have like a hieroglyphics that would make those first takes, like at least some of them, more
right. If you know if you know exactly what's required, you can also make big mistakes if you do that.
That's right. And that locks you into something
lock you into something before you know it.
Right. See?
So usually the marks come after some direction. It's like, I didn't read it like that. And so, you put your little exclamation marks or whatever. I don't know, take a breath.
Did you ever have like an approach to your career where you had this outlook where like, okay, I'm getting all these villain roles and I have to adjust now. I don't want to be locked in. Or, I mean, I know that you talked about how you started doing voice work just because you wanted to stay home. You had a child and stuff like that. Then that evolved your career, kind of like decisions like this. But I'm more talking about just in terms of, is it important for an actor to have this kind of outlook on what roles they're getting, what type they are, and is that something that you had to either adopt for yourself or ignore? And what were the ramifications of either one of those decisions? And what would your advice be to people having to do either one of those as they are, evolving with their careers?
There was a time when I thought I had to actually do things different, like within the first, maybe the first 10 movies that I made, the first 10 professional jobs I got. Now I've got to do something completely different. Now I've got to move something complete. And then you start seeing the challenges within, just within the scripts that you're shown. The 80s, I get in trouble for saying this, or at least maybe with the people that I worked with, but they're the studio movies. But the 80s scripts were not brilliant scripts. They just, there was a lot of retread stuff, and they would get boring, especially the bigger the budget. It just seemed like it was tedious things. Stuff like Dances with Wolves had to be brought up by a movie star, and then
right.
committed to by a movie star, and that risk taken by somebody like him, like Kevin, in order to make, and that was a great bust out hit. Nobody expected it to be. Great sort of narrative choices that was made, and an interesting story. So those things weren't those weren't available to me. I couldn't I couldn't say, well, I want to go a different direction. I just had to deal with whatever was showing up, in my lap, or what I was being directed to. And you kind of hope that the people that put you on the list are a little, can see beyond what you just did, and they can't. They don't. That's also not in their job description. Usually they do personally, but because of because everybody's sort of selling to everybody else in this business, you have to be able to say, like this, like he was in that one, like he was in that one. And this is a realization I've come to over the years. And so you do have to make an effort to bust out of that. But at the same time, you have to be careful that in making the effort to bust out of that, you're not saying, I'm not interested in Shawshank Redemption.
Right.
I'm not interested in playing that part. I mean, I had just played a prison guard in a movie with Kiefer Sutherland called Last Light. If I said, okay, well, I just did a prison guard, I don't want to play another prison guard, and I wouldn't have done Shawshank. It really has to be dictated by the material, and to be part of whatever story is being told. Now, I'm old, and there's only a few kinds of roles that I fit into these days. I'm older, but I also can fit into these roles. I'm not playing the thug number one who's gonna chase down the bad guy and have the big fight at the end. I'm gonna be the guy that Mr. Big,
Right.
that either survives to corrupt more people, or is immolated in the in the final frame. Who knows? But it depends on the script, and I'll take a tiny role in a great script that's already in my wheelhouse, absolutely. And in a low budget script, I'd happily play somebody completely different for no money. So the opportunity exists no matter where, and if you do a good job, you put it on the reel, and people see you in a different light. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, because casting directors are in an impossible situation.
Yes.
And they might know that, you can do Hamlet, but they're not going to hire you for Hamlet because, Brad Pitt is available.
Right.
Who I'm not saying couldn't do Hamlet. I'm sure he could and would.
And you're still 15 years away from King Lear.
Apparently, but I'm in the perfect time to do King Lear. I'd love to do King Lear right now.
Would you like to do King Lear?
Oh, are you kidding? That would be great.
You heard it, people. Clancy Brown, thank you so much.
Peter, thank you so much. It's a lot of fun.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham, formerly IFP. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.